This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Thursday. Happy Throwback Thursday. Yeah, we're going back in the way back machine, grabbing a couple episodes from a little ways back in the old SMP history. But before we get there, how about we talk a little silver and gold, shall we? The number of ounces of silver needed to buy an ounce of gold now at near 30-year highs. Silver is now a bargain price when compared to gold. It's the perfect time to protect a portion of your savings with silver, and Silver Gold Bull has a wide variety of best value silver for every budget. Simply text or email Grahame for details. Whether you're a seasoned investor or new to precious metals, Grahame will work with you to answer your questions and recommend the best products to meet your investing goals. Whether you're on silvergoldbull.com or .ca, just make sure to reference the Shaun Newman Podcast. Well, when it comes to plumbing and heating, these guys have been keeping homes, farms, and businesses running smoothly since 2010. I'm talking about Guardian Plumbing and Heating, and one of the things that really sets them apart is how they make life easier for their customers. They've got technicians on shift from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day, including weekends, and they don't charge you anything extra for evening or weekend service. That means you can get the help you need on your schedule without worrying about surprise costs. All you got to do is go to guardianplumbing.ca and find out all you can and more about Guardian Plumbing and Heating. They're protecting their customers from the unexpected through innovative solutions. Look no further than Guardian. RecTech Power Products. For the past 20 years, they've been committed to excellence in the power sports industry. Summer is upon us, which means if you're in the mood for fishing boats, oh yeah, they got those Lund fishing boats. You want a little pontoon? Yeah, they got those too. And maybe you're into the bush and you want a side-by-side. You're getting the point here, folks. You should stop in on the west side of Lloydminster, see their showroom, tell Ryan I sent you, and take a look at all the things they offer. They got a wide selection of top-end brands there. You will not be disappointed with RecTech. I'm telling you. They're open Monday through Saturday. Their showroom is almost second to none, I would say. And whether you're on the golf course or at the lake, anywhere in between, they can help get the right machine for you. Just go to rectechpowerproducts.com, and everything is there. You can see everything they're working with. I really suggest if you're driving through Lloydminster, though, you stop in and say hello. Planetcom. When you're busy running a growing business, trying to stay on top of the ever-changing world of information tech, well, it can be overwhelming to say the least. Yeah, you're telling me. And they want to take care of that for you, leaving you to do your thing while they do theirs. For the past 22 years, Planetcom has been there to boost your productivity by proactively managing every aspect of your IT infrastructure, both in cloud and in the house, and it ensures you're not too tangled up in technology to get anything done. If you want to see one of their products, just go to theshaunNewmanPodcast.com, my original website. Well, that's a long story. Regardless, Planetcom has helped build the new one, and you can check it out. And if you want to check them out, go to planetcom.ca for all your tech needs. Ignite Distribution is a high-service supply company based in Wainwright, Alberta, specializing in automotive parts and a wide range of additional products, including safety equipment, welding supplies, fasteners, and janitorial items. They're operating as a Napa Auto Parts retailer. And I'm telling you, Shane Stafford is the guy you want to get a hold of, 780-842-3433. They don't come much higher. I was talking about Caleb Taves on the other episodes, and Shane Stafford's another one of those guys that if you want to make sure your business is running smoothly, look no further than Shane Stafford and his team at Ignite Distribution. We have the Cornerstone Forum. I'm just keeping it in your brain. It is coming back in 2026. As we get more information, we will make sure to keep you guys up to date. We have the new studio here, hopefully coming sooner than later. As soon as I get back from holidays, we'll be hammering some things out. Really excited to unveil that, to be in there, to be honest. And we're doing a cleanup in August. I don't know how much I'm checking my phone right now, but if you're interested in being a part of cutting down some trees and that type of thing, and you're wanting help, you can get your name on the Value for Value wall. Come lend a chainsaw. Just shoot me a text, and I'll probably have the date by now figured out of when that is going to be. As you're noticing, today is a Throwback Thursday, and for the month of July, we're going in the way, way back machine and picking out some episodes that have caught my attention, maybe yours as well, And, make sure to stick around at the end of the episode. I've re-listened to all these, and I jotted down some notes because, some of these I haven't listened to. Well, probably none of us have listened to in a long time. But lots of times an episode sticks out to me. Maybe I really listen to it, maybe I don't. I made sure to go back and re-listen to this, and so at the end of these episodes, I have a couple extra thoughts, so make sure to stick around for that. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. Make sure to share with a friend. Make sure to hit retweet. Make sure to do all the things. You're all wonderful, and I appreciate you hanging out on a Throwback Thursday. Now, let's get on to that tale of the tape. Originally from Kingston, Ontario, he played one game in the NHL for the Boston Bruins. Over 700 games in the minor leagues. He spent 5 years as the coach of the Boston Bruins, where he made the Stanley Cup Finals twice. He spent 1 year as the head coach of the Colorado Rockies. In 1981, he was hired by the CBC as a color commentator, but it would be a year later, in 1982, where he made his big impression on his debut on Coach's Corner. For the next 37 years, he co-hosted the show, becoming part of the fabric of the Canadian culture. I'm talking about Mr. Don Cherry. So buckle up. Here we go.
Hey, this is Don Cherry. Now, don't forget, listen to Shaun's broadcast. It's one of the best.
Well, welcome to the Shaun Newman podcast. Today, I am joined by Mr. Don Cherry. Sir, how's it going?
Very going very good. Doing my podcast now and the Twitter, and having a lot of fun. So thank you very much for having me on the show.
Appreciate you hopping on, Don. A lot of Western Canada always we think awfully high about your views, and I know a lot of people always wonder, how is Mr. Cherry these days? The podcast is a roaring success for yourself, The Grapevine. How's been the change from going, live broadcasts every Saturday night and more to doing the podcast?
Well, I do miss doing Coach's Corner. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I look forward to. Well, when you do it for over 40 years, you sort of look forward to it, and I do miss it. There's no doubt about it. But you have to do what you have to do, and I did what I had to do, and I felt the same way. And I think a lot of people from the West feel the same way as I do. And the podcast, my son, Timothy, and my daughter, and Dell, my grandson, he's the guy that makes the sound so good. And we go over and we sit around and just shoot the breeze and have a lot of fun. And Tim has a lot of questions. He has the questions there. I don't quite understand it quite that I should, but he understands it, and I have a lot of fun. And the Twitter is we were picked one of the best podcasts of 2020, and my Twitter has over 800,000. So I still have a lot of fun, and long as it's fun, that's the main thing.
Well, I gotta say, Don, getting you on before Christmas. I'm sure you get this all the time, but growing up in the Newman household, one of the staples of Christmas morning was we'd give Dad a box of turtles, followed quickly by in his stocking Rock'em Sock'em. And so the Newman household every morning on Christmas Day was eating chocolate, watching your Rock'em Sock'em videos. And we did that for, up until obviously I moved out of Mom and Dad's house. But even after we'd come back for college, me and my older brother Harley, we still did it until, we finally were both married and had kids of our own and that kind of thing. But I assume you get that all the time. But you entered everybody's houses on Christmas morning, at least around these parts. And for you to come on and be on December 23rd, right before Christmas, is as close to I can get as bringing Rock'em Sock'em back for the people here in Lloydminster and surrounding communities.
Well, isn't that nice of you to say that? Again, it was my son that did it, Timothy, and we did it for over 30 years. We thought 30 years was enough, and I don't think too many people have a CD anymore, but we did it for 30 years, and Tim, again, was instrumental in doing it all, and I had a lot of fun doing it. We did it. I remember we had we had different. I remember one time I went and I tried on. I wore a kilt one time, and I picked up the wrong kilt, and Rose was small, and holy smokes, I haven't put on this much weight, and I couldn't put on the kilt, so we put it on backwards. It was really funny. We did put it on backwards, and we did it in the Hall of Fame. I forget which one that was, but it was a lot. We had a lot of fun doing it, and I'm glad Hardy and you listened to it. And we did have a lot. Again, if you don't have fun doing it, then there's no sense in doing it. But it was that was a lot of work. For 30 years, we did it for 30 years, and had a lot. And Timothy was the head guy that did that too.
Well, you guys did an exceptional job. We were at work. We pulled it up on YouTube there the other day. Just to, it's honestly impresses me about going back to those videos. I didn't realize we quote that all the time, right? Like one of I had Cheevers, Jerry Cheevers, obviously your favorite goaltender, on the podcast a little while back, and I was explaining to him. One of my favorite stories that you've said is about Bobby Orr embarrassing the Atlanta Flames, where he goes end to end on a penalty kill. Nobody wants to go behind the net, and he ends up going, and then he tucks the goal in. And we got watching it, and I can't believe how many things you say in Rock'em Sock'em that as a kid you internalized, and don't lay on the ice, tea time, all the things that are in there. Just became so much ingrained in the Canadian hockey culture, I guess.
Yeah, we had, like I say, with a lot of kids listened to it, and if you notice, there was never any swearing in it. The same as the podcast, there's never any swearing. And I did my books. I did 4 books with number 1 author in the book. I don't understand that. I just told a story to Al Strachan. You remember Al? He used to write for the Gazette, and I think the Sun. But no, they were all people weren't afraid to have the kids listen to the Rock'em Sock'ems or the books or anything like that. There's never, and the podcast, there's never any swearing in it, because I know a lot of kids listen to it, and I just don't go for it. I mean, when I played and when I coached, I guess I was pretty bad with the swearing and that. I'll tell you a funny story. We're in. I was just thinking of it the other day. I was running Maple Leaf Gardens. Believe it or not, when it first started in the Gardens, and I coached, the people used to go and get a hot dog. They'd be in amongst the bench, and they had to put police at the other end to stop them. wait till a commercial will come on. And I remember this older lady. It was about 12 rows up, and I was coaching the Bruins, and she said, "Cherry, you got a filthy mouth." And she was about my mother's age. And did I ever feel bad? So I went up and I sat and while the game was going on, I'm talking to her, and I said to her, "No, ma'am, you've heard that language before." She says, "Yeah, but I didn't pay $200 for it." So so it was, as you know, and as Harley knows, that there's never any swearing in at Rock'em Sock'ems, and I just don't believe in it. And when I did my banquets too. I remember I was in Lloydminster. I did a banquet, and some of the other guys used to swear, used to say that F word all the time. I don't know. I think they just did it I don't know why they did it, but they did it. But I never did, and I think that's why a lot of kids watch Rock'em Sock'em, not because it was a tough. We never had. I think we only had 3 fights in it. The whole thing. Everybody thinks the Rock'em Sock'em was banging and a lot. But it wasn't. It was teaching the kids safety and the whole deal. So I was quite thrilled that we lasted 30 years. Not too many people last 30 years and something.
Well, I tell you what, you're earning brownie points with my mother right now, because from time to time I may have the odd colorful comment come out on the podcast, and my mother always listens. She always gives me hell about it, Don, and I have to apologize.
Your mother knows, but always listen to your mother. You'll never go wrong, and that's that. I'm glad she agrees with me.
Now, growing up, Don, did you see, I mean, nobody could see how, I highly doubt you could see that, wow, you're going to do all these amazing things. You're going to have this career that is, you were voted number 7 of most, what was it, most popular Canadians, most famous Canadians, something like that. And I remember thinking, like, just think about that. A guy who commentates is one of the most influential Canadians of all time. But when you were a young guy, did you ever go like, wow, I want to make the NHL? I'm sure you're like every other Canadian. But as a young guy, did you see that coming?
No, I'll tell you the truth. I was when I was very stupid when I was young, that I never paid attention in school. I don't know what I was thinking. And all I did was want to play hockey. And I did play hockey, but I played in the American League. And when I was through, I had no trade, I had no education. I couldn't get a job. And I'm going to tell you the truth. This is the honest truth. There, like Mr. Hospital and that, though. I know you're doing it, so I'm going to tell you the truth. That I was unemployed. I couldn't get a job anywhere. I think it was about 19. I forget what it was. Anyhow, it was a recession. Was down in the States. I was living in Rochester, New York, and I established myself as the world's worst car salesman, and I tried to sell cars. And I just couldn't approach people cold. I just couldn't. I was just I don't know why, I was too shy or something. I don't know, whatever it was, and I was down and out, and I really was, and I know what it's like to be unemployed. And it's tough. It was tough. 6 months. I couldn't get a job, and I had a family and the whole deal. And I said to the Lord, I remember one day I laid down. I go to have a nap, and I said, I don't even deserve a nap, and that's how bad I felt about myself. And I said, I remember I got on my knees and I said to the Lord, I said, is this it? I mean, I'm 36 years old and I'm finished. And I swear to God, honestly. It's hard to believe, but a voice said to me, get back into hockey. And I never thought about getting back into hockey. And I made a comeback. I'm going to hurry this through. I made a comeback, and halfway through the season, I got made coach. And 3 years from that, I was coach of Bobby Orr. And but I remember getting on my hands and knees, or on my knees, and the end of the Lord, I said, am I finished? And I mean, I couldn't get a job. I had no trade. I had nothing, and nothing was going on. Nothing was going right. And from that day on, 3 years from that day on, I was coach of Bobby Orr. So, it just shows you to never give up, because nobody was lower than I was. There was no trade and no education, no nothing. And it was a tough time to go. And I know a lot of guys are out west having a tough time with the oil and all that and everything like that. So don't give up. Trust in the Lord, and it'll work out.
You're talking, you went back. I think that right there, what you just said, is probably there's a lot of people out here, Don, that need to hear that, because it is some pretty low times out west. Specifically in our area, it's an agricultural town, but oil and gas, the energy sector has really done wonders to this part of the world, and it has been taking a beating, not only this year, but years previous, and everything going on. There's a lot of people hurting, so I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that'll speak to a lot of people. It's
well, I don't talk about that too much, but I feel that there are some guys out there that and I know how they feel, because there's it's a tough when you got a family, and I had no money coming in. But the Lord, I know it's easy for me to say, but it was a tough deal. And 3 years from then, I was coaching Bobby Orr. Can you imagine that? And Bobby Orr, I mean, I remember I stood on the Boston Gardens and I said, holy smokes, is this really happening to me? And so don't give up. But I remember and I remember down in the Boston Gardens, and it's a funny thing. I got asked by one of the owners of Rochester, but at the time it wasn't. It was Bob Clark, and I remember his name, Bob Clark, and he asked me to coach the high school team. Well, I remember I was just as nervous coaching the high school team, because that's how they get started. Coach minor hockey. You change the lines and have the practice and everything. So when I got made coach halfway through the season in Rochester, I was ready to go because I changed lines and I did everything in high school. So it was a tough deal, but you never know what's going to happen. You got to keep plugging.
Oh, I 100% agree. I find it very fascinating, Don. You know, all your success that you've had, you know, in my lifetime, all I've ever known you to be is a successful guy. I think that's a lot of people. I was born in '86, so by the time I was old enough to remember anything, Rock'em Sock'ems were already rolling along. I think the first one came out in '89. So, you know, and you were already on Coach's Corner by the time, you know, like that was just part of the fabric of our society back then, and Saturday nights and watching you and Ron MacLean. I had Ron on midsummer, and I was saying it was such a nice balance of society, I figured. Skip Craik, who used to be a Boston Bruin just before you got there.
Oh, I remember Skip, yeah.
Great guy. And he was on the podcast, and he said something to me, Don, that has absolutely stuck with me since he said it. I can never shake it, is hockey mirrors society. And I always thought Coach's Corner mirrored society. You had Ron with his ideals, and you had Don with his ideals, and they were such a perfect complement. I always thought, and that's what made it entertaining, right? You both weren't bashing.
Well, I still don't know. Somebody asked me about that, and I said I still don't know. I just went out and spoke like the regular guy, and I tried to get things that I thought people would be interested in, and you know, it was 40 years. I think it was 40 years we were going. I think I was going on 1980. I think it was, and this year got terminated. But I went from 1980, and when I first started out, I used to do color, and I used to favor the Boston Bruins too much, and they told me you can't favor the Boston Bruins.
You can't be doing that, Don.
Yeah, I got told that, and my last day of coloring, Craig McTavish scored the overtime goal or something, or sort of goal. And I said, we're beating them, Montreal. I said, we're beating them tonight. That was the last time I ever did color. So at the end, they said, well, Ralph Mellenby, who liked me, I guess, and he says, we'll just put him on at the end of the first period, give him 3 or 4 minutes, and how could he get in trouble there? Little did he know.
Do you remember the first time you got that little segment, Don? And was it well received? Like, what was the first Coach's Corner like?
I don't remember. I was on with Dave Hodge. I don't think Dave liked me very much, and I don't think he really wanted to be on. But I was on with Dave Hodge, but I don't remember the very first one. But I remember the very first one with Ron MacLean. Ron had a habit of always looking down all the time, and they told him, you've got to stop looking down. You got to stare. You know, got to talk to the people you're being interviewed. And I remember the very first one I was doing with them, there was a great big, you know, when you stare something at something, he was staring at me in the eye, and a great big tear running down his, holy, is this guy going to cry every time he does Coach's Corner? And but I remember that one. That was a funny one. And he didn't quite get it the first year or so. He was very serious, you know. I think he comes from Red Deer, and I used to kid him all the time and everything, and he didn't quite get it. Then all of a sudden he snapped into it and got carried. But I mean, the first year anyhow, he didn't quite get it. He's very very sensitive guy, and I know he comes from Red Deer. He thinks very highly of Red Deer and all that. He's always talking about Red Deer. So yeah, that was the first one. I remember the very first one I did with him. That was the first, but I don't remember the first one I did with Dave Hodge. I can't remember. I was always in trouble all the time. I don't know why, but I always was. They were going to fire me about 10 times. I don't know how I ever lasted for 40 years. Is beyond me. I remember the one guy. He was the head of the thing, and he said, and we had a meeting, and I remember it was down at the Blue Jays. They had, and I didn't want to meet me in his office, I guess. And he says, my legacy is going to be. He says, I'm retiring in 3 months. He says, my legacy is going to be is that I get rid of you. I said, we'll see, and never did. But I I know he'd like to. The whole bunch of them would have liked to got rid of me, and I don't know how I lasted 40 years. Now that I get talking about it, I really don't. I was supposed to be gone 10, but I thought, and that thing they had with the Greatest Canadian. It was called the Greatest Canadian. Well, I don't consider myself the Greatest Canadian. I think I was on TV. I think they knew me. That's the only reason that they voted for me. And I remember a guy out west had a license, the Wild Rose from Alberta, and I still have it hanging up. It said vote for, and it had a cherry on it. And I framed it, and I still have it in my office. It really made me feel good. So no, I don't remember the first one with Hodge, but I remember the first one with Ron.
Did you ever, you are a guy who says what is on his mind, and that is a rare characteristic these days. My grandmother used to be the same way. She used to just tell. There was no splitting words, right? It was I say what I mean, and today is a little different than that. Did you ever get accustomed to some of the backlash you received on? Was that like, I highly doubt it was enjoyable, but I assume after like the first 10 times you're like, yeah, this is going to send them running, right? Like, I mean, because as many people that loved you, there was always the opposite that just wanted to hate on you. You mentioned a guy wanting to get rid of you in his career. Like that, I mean, that's got to be almost like a surreal experience to have somebody say that.
No, I remember my very first write-up that was bad write-up about me was a good friend of mine, and I thought he was a good friend. Well, he still is. He was. It was a writer for The Sun, I think. No, and it wasn't The Sun. It was The Star, Toronto Star, and it was Trent Frayne. I remember, holy smokes, did he give it to me? I didn't know. I had never had a bad write-up before. And I didn't know if I could go on. I didn't know if I could go on Coach's Corner. To tell you the truth, it was so bad. I mean, I forget what it was, but it was my first. And then I got toughened on that one. Then I got a little tougher and a little tougher. And actually, tell you the truth, I didn't mind them at all. I didn't. They wanted to write bad things about me. I remember one lady that writes. She's still writing, by the way. She lists bad 10 things and one of them was the misogynist. I didn't even know what a misogynist was. I thought it was massaging people. And what else did she call me? A troglodyte. I said, what the hell's a troglodyte? And I found it was a little midget, I guess, that lived underneath a bridge. So she was reaching for a lot of things I was. Anyhow, to answer your question, I got used to them, and I didn't. The people that didn't like me, I just took them where they came from. They were left wing that did not like me, and I didn't like them, so it didn't make any difference. Didn't bother me. But the first one, holy smokes! I remember I didn't know whether I could go back if I could do hockey in Canada again. To tell you the truth.
Yeah, well, I can imagine that over a lifetime of having that, you eventually become accustomed to it. But like all of us, the first one must have stung. It must have been a dagger to you.
It was. I didn't even, and I think it was Saturday morning, and I didn't know if I could go on television that night. It hurt so bad because I didn't think I was that bad, and holy smokes! And then, like I say, you get used to them, and I got a lot of bad ones, but I look forward. After a while, you look forward to them, and it doesn't hurt you at all. But the first one, if you've never had it before, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, I certainly can't say I'm pretty, as you can tell from 20 minutes, Don. I'm pretty I don't know, relaxed. I consider myself a young guy at 34, which to the 20-year-old I'm old, but I look at you, Don, and I go, you're a guy who's lived a lot of life. You've seen a lot of things and been around some very interesting people. Had a fortunate run in your career, I would say. And I just mean that in the sense that you're absolutely right. You could have been done. You could have to last as long as you did without having a major, not only just an incident on air, but just, like life could have hit you somewhere and you could have been going left instead of right. And I mean, to sit and get to pick your brain for an hour is something I will never forget. And I just want to soak in all the knowledge you got in between your ears and see if there's some things to learn.
Well, to tell you the truth, as I said before, with the Lord, and I can hear a lot of guys now. Listen to this guy talking, but it's a true story, and I do believe in the Lord. I go to church, try to go to church, and I was down. Nobody's down and out more than I was. I had nothing going at all. Really, I had nothing in back. Let's see, what year was that? That would have been back in the '60s, I think. I made a comeback, and like I told you, like earlier, I told you about the thing was. So I've had a pretty good life, and as they say, there's a lot more. There's a lot of days behind me than there are in front of me. So, but I've had a good time, and this big thing is my son Timothy is the guy that does it all, and I've been very fortunate. And like I said, those guys, I know some guys are listening right now that are unemployed. I know how you feel because I remember my mother phoning and asked, "How are you doing?" I used to get mad at my mother. How am I doing? You get mad at your mother, and it was tough. And you have a good woman. I had she never complained, and it was. I don't know what I would have done if she had complained and had been whining all the time and everything. But she knew I'd somehow come out of it, and at least I think she did anyhow.
I read, and now this for all the ladies listening, when you talk about a good woman, I read in the minors you moved 53 times.
Yeah, and I remember Rose when we had when I told her we were going to Three Rivers, and she was from Hershey. She had a lovely home in Hershey, and Hershey is like a paradise, And she said, "Where's Three Rivers?" And I didn't know where Three Rivers, Quebec was either. And I remember taking we had a cardboard box, and she was taking the ketchup, the ketchup and the mustard and stuff like that. It was half full because we couldn't afford to buy new mustard. I remember the cardboard box putting in the half ketchup and stuff like that. We couldn't leave it because we couldn't afford to buy new stuff over there. And I remember halfway through, I had a car with bald tires on it, and I remember we were somewhere in Quebec. I don't know where it was, and the car wouldn't start. We'd get off for gas, and the car wouldn't start, and it was about 11 o'clock at night, and it was it was cold. It was right in the middle of winter. Let me out in the middle of winter, and we went into the coffee shop, and Cindy, my daughter, was with me. She was she'd be about 3 or 4. And she about 3 or 4. And I said, "No, let's all pray that the car starts," because they were going to close up at 11. I don't know what we would have froze to death. And car started, and I was lost, and so I got there. We had to play, and hadn't eaten, and Rose went into a motel, and I played that afternoon. Actually, I had to play that afternoon, and on the way, the guys that are listening, you'll say, and the guy said, "Come on, Don, you got to stop for one beer, and I said, "Well, I better stop, I better get back to the motel." And they said, "No, you better come on, you have one." Well, I have one and two, and all of a sudden I look at the watch, and it's about 4 o'clock. Oh, the game is over. Well, it must have been later than that, about 6 o'clock. And I got back to the motel, and Rose hadn't eaten for about 24 hours. She was eating chocolate bars. So I went in, and all the wives were at a place called the Golden Rooster. I'll never forget it. And Cindy came, and I gave Cindy a bunch of dimes, and she played they had one-arm bandit. So anyhow, and Rotka with all the wives, and back in those days, there was only 6 teams in the National Hockey League, and there were 6 teams in the American League, 6 teams in the Western League, and in the Central League there was 6. So I think it worked out to be about 18 or something like that. But and defensemen, there was 6. They carry 5, so there was 30. There was 30 defensemen in the National Hockey League. Now they carry about 8, and there's about 30. So there's about 300 or 400 right then. But back in those days, if you didn't make the National Hockey League, the American League was the second best. Western League was the third best, in the Central League. The whole of all of hockey from the year before, like from back then, would be playing in the National Hockey League right now. But it was only 30. Imagine that, only 30 defensemen in the whole world in the National Hockey League. Hard to believe. Hard to believe.
That's fine company you were in.
Yeah, they were all good. They make the National Hockey League now, and it was tough hockey. It was big boy hockey back then. It was a lot tougher. I don't think it was better, but it was tougher. And the guys back then, there were maybe about 3 or 4 guys can really hammer a puck on a team. But now everybody can shoot a puck. I mean, everybody got those sticks and everything. And it's a lot different now than it was back in those days. And I mean, I'm glad the players are making the money they're making now. I mean, we win. I remember with Punch Imlach, I signed my contract, and he said, "Don't you want it?" And I said, "Well, are you going to give me any more money?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, what's the sense of arguing with you?" And Punch, he was in Springfield before he went to the National Hockey League. He said, "Well, I'm going to the National Hockey League." But a lot of people don't remember Punch Imlach. Punch Imlach was, I think he won 4 Stanley Cups with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I hit the tough guys. I hit Hap Ems in my junior. He was probably the smartest guy I ever played for, but he wasn't a very nice guy. And then I went to right from him, and I went to Eddie Shore. Geez, I hit the tough guys. I'll tell you, boy, there's nobody tougher in the world than Eddie Shore. He was a tough guy. We'll call him eccentric now. Back then, I think he was nuts, but we'll call him eccentric now. The way the world is going, we have to be careful.
What was one of the tough things that Mr. Shore had you do, maybe in a practice?
Well, that was a tough one. Brian Kilray, the winningest coach ever in junior hockey.
And a fantastic book, Don. That's a fantastic book.
There's a guy you should get on, too, is Brian Kilray. He got stories about Eddie Shore, more stories than anybody. But Eddie Shore really liked him. And I didn't. He didn't like me. I don't know why. I guess I never did anything bad back to him. He just didn't like me. And but he liked Brian Kilray. He liked guys that could skate with their knees bent. And unfortunately, I was one of those guys that stiff-legged skater. And he never liked me. And he thought I was too rough. Imagine Eddie Shore thinking I was too rough. He says, I remember him saying, "Mr. Cherry, if you could visualize that in reality your maneuverability is nil." That's pretty good. I didn't know what he was talking about, but anyhow, he sent me to Three Rivers, and then I think a year later he sent me to Sudbury, Ontario. So he didn't like me, but he liked Brian Kilray. Boy, Brian Kilray could go an hour easy. He knows. He was with Eddie Shore. I think in fact, he liked Eddie Shore so much. He was with the L.A. Kings. He got the first goal for the L.A. Kings, and he didn't like it there, and he has to go back to Springfield. Oh, I couldn't believe anybody would ask him back to Springfield, but he did. And he's the winning coach ever, and I think he's 2,000 wins or something like that. Won the Memorial Cup Coach of the Year in OHL. So he's the guy you should get on too.
You know, in your lifetime, in your career of playing in the minors, to coaching in the NHL, to being on Hockey Night in Canada and commentating and everything, can you believe how far hockey has come? Like, I mean, from the days of 6 teams to we're about to have 32, the money the availability to watch games, like growing up, it was Saturday night. That there wasn't much, And if you were older than me, you remember the days of the radio and curl up around it, listening to Foster Hewitt and things like that. I remember
when we were young, we used to play. We used to skate all day at the school, Rideau School, and then we'd come home and we'd play a road hockey. And your mother would come in. My mother would come in, and we'd have our bath, we'd have our cocoa, and we'd sit and we'd listen. We'd fall asleep after a while because we were young, and we used to listen to Foster Hewitt. And he never did the first period, He did the second period, and somehow or other, just hearing the voice of Foster Hewitt give you chills. He was more popular than the players, and just listening to Foster Hewitt was really something. I know people can't believe it listening to radio, but it was a big deal. And I suppose I guess hockey, and then back in early days, they were just trying to Maple Leafs on. That's why they're so popular, I guess. And but I remember when I was a little boy listening to Foster Hewitt, and he'd come at the end of the first period, and he'd say the score is 3-0 for Toronto or something. And the players used to do something they don't do anymore. The only time they do it, the only time they bang the boards is after a fight. You ever notice that? And but they used to bang it after a goal, and somehow you had a feeling close to the players. You could almost hear the players bang the boards. And if you don't ever, and the players don't bang the boards now, except both teams bang the boards. It's when after a fight, which is and they're trying to get, and the fighting is down. All the fighting is down and everything. The funny thing is, but the guy's making the money now. Holy guy, guy's making $3 million that scored 14 goals. If you scored 14 goals before, you didn't hang around too long. But McDavid, whatever money he's getting a lot of money. He deserves every penny because he's the best hockey player in the world, as far as I'm concerned. And I saw him when he was a minor. When he was a minor, he was a Bantam actually, and he was terrific. And he was terrific back then. There's another guy he come up and played with, Roland McEwen. I remember he was a defenseman. I see somebody's picked him up. I forget who's picked him up now, but both of them come up and played Bantam hockey for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you knew David. You just saying, looking at him, boy, he's the best player in the world.
When you mention, well, as an Oilers fan, we get to see McDavid and Mr. Draisaitl do their magic every single night. Hopefully, sooner than later, we'll go a little deeper in the playoffs. I know a lot of this area, we've had a tough go for a few years, Don, but with some of the best players in the world suiting up for the Oil, it's been a lot of fun watching. Because I wasn't old enough to remember the glory days of the boys on the bus, of Gretzky and Messier, and the list goes on and on and on.
The only time they were on the bus is when they went from the arena to the airplanes. Who are they kidding? Boys on the bus, back to the bus. I mean that was whoever thought that up was boys on the bus. They all flew out there, and they had a great club. Where would they go on the bus? They never went anywhere on the bus. Maybe they go to Calgary, and but I had to laugh when I read that boys on the bus. They never spend the bus. We used to spend 8 and 10 hours on the bus, and in the American Hockey League, that was the way we played. I mean, we got used to the bus. I went from junior hockey right to the American League, and I didn't know any difference. But I had to laugh when I saw the headlines, boys on the bus. But they had a great club, and you're very lucky out there to see you get to see McDavid. I know they don't go far in the playoffs, and Draisaitl, but at least you get to see McDavid, the best player in the world, and the fans are pretty good there. They don't boo, and I have always said that. I'm not saying that because I know that the Oiler fans and listen to that. But if you listen to them, they don't boo the power play, which is, well, I guess even when they had a bad power play, they don't have a bad power play now, but they had a bad power play back then, and they didn't boo, which was great. I as a player, I used to appreciate that because every other city does the same thing. They boo the power play. And Montreal, they boo the power play. And Toronto here, it's not going, they boo. So as a player, I always remembered that they didn't boo the power play. Funny, eh?
You talk about greats, McDavid, and then, just in passing of Gretzky and the boys. Your first year coaching, I'm a defenseman, Don. I've heard the stories. It's probably why I enjoy him embarrassing the Flames so much on your Rock'em Sock'em tape, is Bobby Orr is arguably, from anyone who saw him play, the best player ever. And that is so many people talk about that. What was it about Bobby Orr, A, that was just so bloody impressive, but two, you would have been around when he signs with the Chicago Blackhawks, and I've read the stories on it, but maybe you can impart some wisdom from being around it back then.
Well, I know there's young defensemen listening out there, and I'll give you just the year he played for me. He had 46 goals. Now, that's hard to believe.
No kidding.
46 goals. He had 89 assists, and he was plus 123. And he had over 100 minutes in penalties. I mean, when you think of that, that just tells you enough who's the great. He's unbelievable. The big thing about him, he could skate. Him and Coffey. Coffey was the same type of skater, only he used to go on the outside, and Bobby, unfortunately, used to go to the inside. And when you went to the inside, back in those days, they really hit. And that's why, a lot of people don't realize that he retired at 28 years old. 28 years old. And defensemen, if you look at Coffey and that, they were just coming into their prime at 28. And defensemen, as you know, you played, you just started to learn the game. It takes you that long almost, and he retired at the top, at the very top. Let's see, he won the scoring title. He won the scoring title twice as a defenseman. And he went to Team Canada. He was picked the MVP, and then he went to Chicago. And nobody ever saw him in Chicago because I think he only played about 17 games or something like that. So nobody ever saw him on the way down. That's why everybody or anybody that saw him play, and nobody ever saw him on his way down because we all you get older, but they only saw him at the very top. And imagine that, 46 goals. I think Coffey was close to that. I forget what, but Coffey was him and Coffey were the best skaters I ever saw.
One I'd read, and maybe even Ron had said this too, about your love or fascination with Hollywood, whether it be movies, commercials, etc. You're iconic for your suits and just the way you presented yourself, which will be forever emblazed on my brain. What was it about Hollywood that you enjoyed so much, Don?
I don't know. I get all the books on them, and I like Anthony Hopkins and guys like that, and Errol Flynn, and I just don't know. And I read all the books on the producers. I read that one book. It was by Robert Evans. The kid stands in the picture, and I don't know. I go from Hollywood to Sir Francis Drake and Lord Nelson, and I think if you read the books on Sir Francis Drake or Lord Nelson, you'll see how my philosophy in life is. And I don't know why it is with Hollywood. I was always reading books, so sometimes Ron used to make fun of me. I'd read the books on Joan Crawford or somebody like that, and I would always hide the cover, because people would make fun of you didn't. But I did. I read all the stories on. I've got all the books, but Sir Francis Drake and Lord Nelson to me, and Shackleton, and guys like that. I used to read about books all the time and everything. I don't know why, but I just did. And he used to make fun of me all the time.
I watched a documentary, or it was kind of a mini-series documentary kind of thing, and part of it was behind the scenes of Coach's Corner, and I understand a bit, but I was always very impressed on how much time you guys spent, and specifically you, on what you were going to say on your segments. I don't think the average person realizes how much time Don was spending figuring out what he was going to say and running it by guys and making sure that it was the right thing or maybe the most impactful thing.
Well, I tell you the truth. I used to have Kathy Broderick. She was there? She had red hair. I remember. She was just, and she knew she'd pick things out, and she'd tell me before. We talked about Saturday morning, but I didn't go over with Ron. We used to 9:30. He used to get up, but we used to talk. We used to talk over. And he well, can you mention this? Can you mention that? I noticed they don't mention the Allen Cup and things like that anymore. That was a big thing with me because amateur. That was an amateur, the Amateur Cup. I don't know why. And I used to have a lot of fun. Well, I just the big thing is that I did what I didn't, and I think that what got me in trouble is that that a lot of people didn't like it, but I used to try to do it. If the older hockey players would watch it, and it seemed to work out pretty good. But if the older hockey players would like it, I didn't want them to think I was a phony. I remember a lot of things we said. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But I used to talk about the older players a lot. I think a lot of people. I used to get sick of me talking about Bobby Orr, I guess, but I used to have a lot of fun.
I think you talking about the older players and the stories from the past was what made it so genuine to me, right? Like, you're talking about your experience. You had a career, man. Like, all the years in the minors, making the Stanley Cup Finals, Coach of the Year. Just listening about it here this morning is, like I say, it's something I won't soon forget. Here's one for you that's a blast from the past, Don. I did not realize this, and I assume people from our area maybe knew at the time, or maybe it's been long forgotten. But I had read a story last night that said when the Saskatoon Blues were going to be a thing, the St. Louis Blues, for people who recall, were going to move to Saskatoon, become the Saskatoon Blues. Bill Hunter was bringing them here. I think it was 1983.
Bill, yeah.
And you had agreed to be the head coach.
Yeah, and we were one step away, and he brought me to the arena and showed me the arena. He said we can put another 5,000 on each end, and we can get up around 16,000. We were all set to go, and somebody stepped in a Checker Dome down there. I forget the guy's name. Anyhow, he bought the club, and they did not want to go. They said that it really makes me laugh. That was before they said Edmund. They said the people out west. They didn't realize the people out west will drive 200 miles to see a game. Doesn't mean a thing, and. Well, Bill, he had it all set up, boy, and him and Vi and his wife, and they were all set to go. And he was would he ever promote? I'll tell you that it would have been a success. We'd still be going, but we're only one guy away, and one guy stepped in and bought it. And the NHL said hockey out west will never go. Boy, are they wrong.
They were wrong because, as we know in Saskatchewan here, and you've hit the nail on the head, people are willing to drive an awful long ways to see professional sports. Yeah. Just take a look at the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I tell you what, they got the best fans probably across any sport. Absolutely. Because it's the only professional. Well, now they have the Rush, but at the time, It was the only professional sport Saskatchewan had. So I married a girl from Minnesota, and I was at a Vikings game, and sure enough, there's the green Saskatchewan Roughriders jerseys walking around. And being a Saskatchewan boy, you got to go talk to them now. And then you sit there and have a beer with them, and it's awesome. And that's what Saskatchewan, they're proud of where they're from, and they're proud of their team. And if the St. Louis or Saskatoon Blues had ever happened on, you probably would have been an absolute legend in Saskatchewan, bigger than you are right now. And the Blues would probably be one of the strongest teams right now, I bet, because if it ever came to Saskatchewan, they never would have let them leave.
Never. They had a brand new arena, and he could put 5,000, and we're all set to go. And I was all set to go too. I was really looking forward to it. And by golly, some guy stepped in and the National League gave it to him. I think we were going to pay more money in the whole deal and everything. It didn't make any difference. They did not want a team out west. Boy, can you imagine that? We've been like the Rough Riders. We would be packing them in still out there, and it was terrific. Wild Bill was so disappointed. I remember phoning me, telling me that somebody had stepped in, but he thought he had it, and that would have been. But we would have been packing them in, still packing them in there, and boy, what a team that would have been.
Well, one other team that you coached that is no more was the Colorado Rockies, and I did not realize this until I started doing some research on it, Don. That watching you growing up, the name Hardy Astrom everybody knew it, the Swedish Sieve, right? Like and then I started reading the story on the Colorado Rockies, and I'm like, oh my God, Hardy Astrom was the goalie there. I'm like, well, that makes sense, right? I guess I just, as a kid, I always thought it funny how the stories went. The Colorado Rockies.
He wasn't a bad guy.
No, I don't.
He wasn't a bad guy. His only
he
problem
just couldn't
was
stop a puck.
Yeah. Well, he was with New York, I think, and we ended up with him, and I think the general manager, Ray Miron, had signed him to pretty big money, so he let us die with him. And the big thing, we had Dougie Favell, who was about and I found out later he had a big argument with Ray Miron, and I couldn't figure out why we didn't have Dougie Favell. And he had a big argument with a guy he was general manager. And I remember he gave me a book, and when I first went there, and all I know about hockey, he opened it up and had blank pages. Little did I know, but I remember Hardy. He wasn't a bad guy. He really wasn't a bad guy. He was from Sweden. His only problem was pucks, and we had a pretty good club. We had Rene Robert, we had Bobby Schmatz, we had Lanny McDonald. Lanny McDonald got 25 goals in 45 games. We had a real good club. What killed us was our goal. I went from Boston Bruins that had terrific two goalies, the Gilly Gilbert and Jerry Cheevers, to Hardy Astrom. I paid the price. I wonder what Hardy's doing now. I think he's coaching now. I hope he's got a good goaltender.
Well, he became famous off the Well, like I say, Hardy Astrom, the name just sticks with me even to this day because I just remember the Swedish Sieve. Oh, those are great memories.
I remember the very first practice we had. You flipped it in. I flipped the puck to him, and he missed it. I went home and I said to Rose, I said, "You better be ready." I don't think we're going to be here around too long with that goaltender, and we weren't. And I think he stayed for the 2 years after I left too, and then they moved to New Jersey. I think it was.
Yeah, New Jersey.
Yeah. New Jersey. I think it had to be. They were ready to pack it in. I think nobody could let a team die like that because we had a pretty good club.
Well, I'll slide it into our final segment here, Don. Once again, do really appreciate you coming on. The Crude Master Final Five, a shout out to Heath and Tracy McDonald, the supporters of the podcast since the very beginning. It's just 5 quick questions for you, Don, and then I'll let you get on with your day. The first one always is, if you could sit down, and I know you've sat down with a lot of people, but if you could have one person to sit down with that you haven't had yet, or maybe you'd like to do again. Who would you want to sit and have a beverage with just to pick their brain?
Well, live? You mean live, or in the past would be Sir Francis Drake. I would like to talk to him and learn how he became such a leader. And but I think Bobby Orr was. I talked to him quite a bit, and I think Bobby Orr.
Okay.
And you're dropping a few names there, but him and I talked quite a bit.
If you were commissioner of the NHL for a day and could either put in a rule or take out a rule, what would you do?
Well, first of all, I'd get the icing straightened out. I mean, that is still, but I think the instigator rule is the worst rule ever put into hockey. A guy that starts a fight could get 10, 7, and you have a guy sticking. No, instigator rule, that would be the one rule I'd take out. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, but I have to admit that Gary Bettman, doing a pretty good job. The salaries have gone from about Zippo to, but I think I can't knock Gary Bettman. I know I have no affiliation or anything now, but he's done a pretty good job with the money the guys are making.
Well, my favorite player to this day growing up, I got a picture of him and Gordy sitting in the studio here, was Steve Yzerman. I was wondering if you got a Steve Yzerman story.
Well, you see that picture of him, and they put it on Sportsnet of scoring that goal. It was a great goal. It was the top corner. It was an overtime goal.
Yeah.
And he let it go. A lot of people don't realize, and he was jumping around. The players jumped on him, and hurt his knee. He couldn't play. And he got hurt doing the celebration. And you'll see that goal quite a bit because it's a great goal. He shoots it from the right-hand side, and he puts it in the top corner, and you see him jumping around. A lot of people don't realize, but he was a great little guy. He was protected by the Bruce brothers, Joey Kosher and Bobby Probert. And he always give credit to those two guys that and Bobby Probert and Joey Kosher. So Yzerman, he's got a good job now. I don't know what he's trying to do in Detroit, and did a great job in Tampa, and I think he wants to stay in Detroit. Well, I hope I always cheer for Detroit because of Stevie Yzerman.
Yeah, he's always loved how he conducted himself and still conducts himself. And when he was on one knee in the playoffs, their last run, man, was there anything more, I don't know, endearing? Like, I mean, just like, man, you want to see that guy win. Like, you could just tell every shift hurt.
He blocked shots, and he had a bad knee. I know he had a bad knee, and he's still blocking shots. And everybody loved, if you don't love Stevie Yzerman for the way he played, heart and soul, he was the heart and soul of Detroit, of all those great clubs.
The nickname Grapes, now obviously last name Cherry, to me it probably makes sense, but was there a guy or how did the nickname Grapes come up?
Well, Jerry Eamon, he was from out west, and he was a great guy, and he gave me he was kidding me all the time just to play on the name Cherry. And Jerry Eamon was the guy that gave me that name, and he played for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I think he got 11 assists he really played well, and he played with me in Springfield, and he was great. I always thought he'd be a great coach, and he ended up a scout for the Islanders, I think it was, but it was Jerry Eamon that gave me the name, and he was a good guy. He would have been a great coach.
Your final one, I was watching some of your earliest interviews that I could find. And one of the questions you used to ask the NHL players that I really enjoyed was, who's helped you on your way? Who helped Grapes on his way?
Well, Bob Clark, I'd have to say, one of the owners for he got me to coach the high school team. He says, "You're not doing anything. You're unemployed." I said, "True." And he was the guy that gave me the call that do we want to coach the Rochester Americans, only 9, and I had no money coming in. And he says, "Don't you even want to know how much we're paying you?" I said, "No, I just want the chance." So I'd say the Lord first of all, and then Bob Clark was the guy that got me started. And I know nobody's ever heard of Bob Clark, but he was from Rochester, New York, and he was the guy that got me started, first of all with the high school and then with the Rochester Americans.
One bonus one then for you, Don, is maybe what's one of the best lessons you learned along the way?
I never had that one asked me. Well, say what you mean and mean what you say. It got me fired at the end, but I always meant what I said. I think the people saw that I wasn't a phony. I never wanted to be a phony, and everything I said on television, I meant every word of it, and unfortunately, it got me fired. But you have to do what you have to do.
Appreciate it, you coming on, Don. It's been an absolute treat. And
this is the longest one I've ever done in my life, and I can see you're a good guy, and that's why I did it. My voice is starting to go. I haven't done it in a long time, and God love you, and keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Don. Hey, folks. Thanks for tuning into the first Throwback Thursday. This was Don Cherry has been requested an insane amount in recent months, days, weeks, years, I don't know, all the things. And, I always send this episode because I'm like, well, I have had him on, and I've tried to get him back on. And, his team has basically said that, he's not doing interviews like this anymore. And I chuckle about it because at the end he says, this is the longest interview I've ever done. I'm like, well, that's cool. And I don't know if that's true or not, but certainly it was, re-listening to it. It's still surreal to me that like everything I said in there, one of our things in the Newman household growing up on Christmas morning was we'd always buy Dad a box of turtles and get him the latest Rock'em Sock'em, and we'd always watch the Rock'em Sock'em together, And I don't know if we were unique in that or if that was just, like a ton of Canadian families. I always assumed there was a ton of Canadian families. And, to finally, to get him on was surreal. Do I wish it was in video? Yes. We did it. I can't remember who I was telling the story to. Maybe the brothers. They told me it had to be a phone call. And I was like, back then, I'm like, a phone call? Oh, man, how am I going to pull this off? So, of course, just solve your problem, Shaun. And I did it through a Skype call. I recorded a Skype call. And I remember I downloaded a bunch of different things. It worked. And I tested it out on Dustin, I think, to make sure that I didn't bungle it. Because I'm like, I only get one shot at Don Cherry. And, just one of those surreal moments when you hear him say, hey, Shaun, how's it going today? And you're like, oh, my God, I'm talking to Don Cherry. Like, I don't get too starstruck that often, but certainly Don Cherry did that to me. And the other thing, well, no, I got a few things here written down. But, I always say Ruben Mays was the first guy on the podcast who mentioned God. And although that might be true, and certainly the thought I had back then was, do I even put that in there? I'm still kind of shocked at how much Don Cherry points to the Lord as, trusting in the Lord. And, even when you ask, I forget if it was a mentor or somebody who helped him along in life, he mentions people, but he always says the good Lord. And I think that's pretty cool. I didn't realize, I've always said when they removed Don Cherry from Coach's Corner, you can love or hate Ron MacLean. And I assume a lot of people hate Ron MacLean, but they really balanced society. Don Cherry represented one side, and Ron MacLean represented another. And when they got to go at it, you could hate Don Cherry, you could hate Ron MacLean, but you got to see both sides. And when they took out Don Cherry, it was like open season on everything he stood for. And I didn't realize it, as a younger man, how much he points to faith, right? It's quite evident in the interview, I think. I just another thing of where they just removed something and made it open season on a certain segment of the population. I chuckled too. I wrote down, my first thought is no swearing. Cherry tells a story about a woman giving him paying $100 to go to a hockey game and not to hear the swearing. And it's funny. Back then, the novelty of swearing on a show was real. And, it took a lot of years of me doing this, a lot of episodes, to finally just like, it doesn't mean I'm perfect. I do swear from time to time. And I don't think there's, I'm not going to judge anyone else. I'm just trying to control my tongue. And, it's interesting to hear Cherry talk about the swearing. And then my final thought, this is just more of a personal thought, I guess. I guess this is what it is, doing this. I've never re-listened to an episode and then giving off, an extra few minutes. But Don mentions my brother Harley multiple times. I obviously mentioned him to Don at the start. And I was really intrigued at how a guest mentioned something I'd mentioned, like that. They always talk about, like, when you listen to somebody, like, you should really listen, right? And, Don Cherry's the star of this podcast. Let's make no bones about that. But he brought up Harley multiple times, and I thought that was really cool, not only for myself, but for Harley, because probably a lot of you don't know this, but my brother Harley, when I first started this, he listened to every single episode and then would give me feedback. And in the studio, he gave me 2 shadow boxes, one for my first 100 episodes and another for my second 100 episodes. And I probably think after he realized I was going to go berserk on podcasting, he stopped there. But in the back of the shadow box, it has every name of every guest I had in the first 100, and then the same thing for the second 100. And he used to give me positive feedback. And he was one of the guys. I didn't love the name Shaun Newman Podcast. I just didn't know what else to call it back then, and I didn't want it to be pigeonholed into. I just remember the idea of grassroots hockey or something like that. And I'm like, but I want to talk about everything. I don't got a good name. I'm just going to use my name. And I like Joe Rogan, but I knew I couldn't say the Shaun Newman Experience because that'd be way too close. So I just, I was like, all right, Shaun Newman Podcast. And Harley was the first one to go, oh, it's the SMP. And I said, what did you say? He said SMP. And I'm like, oh my God, I like that. And so he helped me with so much at the early days. And I thought it was really cool for Don to bring up his name multiple times. I assume that was cool for him too, because he was 3 years older than me. So, every Christmas morning, me and him were the ones trying to wake all of our siblings up. And then we had bird calls and everything that we'd annoy people. You can just imagine. Oh man, kids. We'd do these things to try and get our older siblings up and our parents up so we could go open stockings and go down and have breakfast and watch Rock'em Sock'em and everything. And for him to get mentioned multiple times, I thought it was really cool. And it reminded me, of how invested he was in the start. The reason why it's SMP, the reason why the logo is that, the reason why it's a gold P, and not all the same color. All those things were conversations I had with Harley really early on. And, just re-listening to this, it just kind of hit me. I'm like, Harley was really invested. So, there's so many of you now that are sitting here after a Don Cherry replay episode that are just as invested. And I don't know how to repay that. I'm just really honored that you'd all be here on a replay of Don Cherry. And that you would, so many of you have been very, understanding is not the right word, encouraging of me taking some time away with family and to just recharge. And, I remember when I came back from Ottawa and I took the 53 days off, there was a bunch of people that were very upset that I left. We need you. We need you right now. Meanwhile, I was falling apart and, my life was falling apart. Everything was falling apart. And a few of those people actually ended up responding a week or two later, apologizing. But, I guess the reason I bring it up is I just appreciate all of you so much for being along for this journey, for giving me different thoughts on guests, I've had a couple different people apologize for texting too much. There's no such thing. I don't need to respond back to every text. I try to see them all, as I'm leaving for holidays. I think the texts are up past 600 again. And, part of that was the Wrath Party interview that really hit the text line hard, I guess. And so I apologize if I don't get back to everybody, but I don't even think I need to do that because all of you, as you sit here listening, are such wonderful human beings. I have the greatest audience under the sun. I don't care what any other podcaster says. And I just appreciate you being along for the ride. I hope you enjoyed the replay, the Throwback Thursday of Don Cherry. I got another one that's special to me coming up next Thursday. The one coming next Thursday is probably the episode of my podcast, the entirety of that I've listened to the most. And I don't even, it just is, it's just for me. And I sit and I listen to it again and I'm like, man, I'll get into that next week, but it's just so, I don't know. It's just one of those moments in time where I'm sitting there and I'm like, I can't believe what's happening is happening, Now, that's a personal thought, a really personal thought, because I've tried explaining it and I just don't know if anyone else understands. Maybe you do. Maybe shoot me a text and you can and you totally can. Either way, this is the first Throwback Thursday. We have 5 of them in July. If you have suggestions, I think I have an open spot. I've kind of, I think my first 2 are solidified. They're already in the ready to roll. I've already listened to them. I have my calendar of what I'm going to listen to and jot notes on. But if you really feel compelled that you got one that needs to be replayed again, I've had a ton of suggestions come in, but certainly I will take them all and then think about it and try and release the best quality replays on Throwback Thursdays. So either way, thanks for tuning in to a replayed episode. Maybe it's the first time you've listened to it. Maybe you were here from the beginning. Either way, appreciate you being along for this ride and listening to some thoughts. God bless you all, and look forward to a few more weeks with the family, but looking forward to your guys' thoughts and some more Throwback Thursdays here coming in the weeks upcoming. So anyways, have a great Thursday.